Possible. It's now my pleasure to introduce the three panelists who will share this virtual stage for our panel discussion. Two of our speakers' organizations are recipients of the 2025 Employer Excellence Awards. Sheila James is the inaugural director of the Office of Indigeneity, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Access, and Social Justice Ideas at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, CHIO, where she advances understandings and strategies that support workforce diversity and health equity. Sheila has over 25 years of experience as an equity, diversity, and inclusion leader, having contributed to cultural, government, and healthcare institutions. Nabil Tamani is the Director of Operations and Human Resources at Fast Forward French Incorporated. Noelle arrived in Canada 8 years ago as a newcomer and began her journey at Fast Forward French as a French teacher. With an academic background in analytics and modeling, including a PhD, two master's degrees, and an engineering degree, she soon discovered her passion for working with people and developing talent. And finally, Cara Gillespie is a recruitment manager at Accenture Canada, leading technology, sales, and client groups recruitment. With experience across inclusion and diversity, operations, and corporate functions, she is a people-focused HR professional known for her collaborative, client-aligned approach to building strong teams. Cara brings practical experience in recruitment strategy, employer partnerships, and workforce inclusion. Welcome to you all. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Sheila, let's kick off our panel discussion with you. Healthcare organizations really sit at the intersection of equity, access, and public trust. As a pediatric health institution serving a diverse population, how does CHIO define DEI as a leadership responsibility rather than simply a program or HR function?
Okay, well, thank you so much for the question, and thank you, of course, for the invitation to speak with you today. First of all, I just want to say that EDI is actually defined in a broader way at CHIO. So it's the Office of I Ideas. So that is indigeneity, inclusivity, diversity, equity, access, and social justice. And the office works across Team CHIO, so that's the CHIO Foundation, the Research Institute, and the hospital to support equitable healthcare outcomes through building respectful engagement and a diverse and inclusive workforce. But I really love that question about leadership accountability. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share a couple of slides to show you how we do this. Okay, see my slides? Oh no, not yet.
Not yet. Yeah,
It's always twice. Okay, you see it now, right?
you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So basically, for that leadership accountability, CHIO is looking at integration. And I noticed that Wendy spoke about how you embed EDI in your operations. So in the same way, we're integrating the operations. There's a particular structure for where the office sits, um, reach across community, and also accountability in the work. So in this first slide, I wanted to talk about the fact that the office is fairly new, only created in 2022, and it came out of the collective voices advocacy of about 20 people across CHIO, who, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, um, the discovery of the unmarked graves at Kamloops and other former residential schools, they came up with like, what is CHIO doing about equity? CHIO had been doing a lot of work, but from different departments, people at the side of their desks doing this work, but there wasn't a cohesive approach. So they brought together this task force called the Equity um, the EDII Task Force, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Indigeneity Task Force. And they came up with 5 different areas for which we had to action. One of those areas was building an office, hiring a director to lead and drive the work. And so when I came in 2022, we repositioned it a bit with CHIO's mandate at the beginning, the center, but also leading with indigeneity, understanding that we cannot move forward in equity without that allyship with Indigenous people, and also recognizing that they wanted more than equity. They want self-determination, cultural autonomy. And so we centered it with indigeneity because as non-Indigenous people, we also have that uh, connection to the land, responsibility to the land, and also that colonial history. And so then we integrated this with our strategy. So the next year, 23, 24, it was our strategy renewal. And at that point, we created a new strategy with 5 branches. And so there's excellent care, strong team, everyone belongs, connected care, and bright future. And we said the I ideas has to move through all of those branches. And so as you can see in the next slide here, um, we've really looked at though like that idea that I ideas has an effect on strong care, on strong team, on excellent care, and we're looking for outcomes. The other thing that is really important is that the structure of the office. So it's a tiny team. We've got 2.5 full-time positions in our Office of I Ideas, but the director position has a seat at the executive table, and that executive table has VPs with hundreds of staff under them. I report to the vice president of Quality Strategy and Family Partnerships, and that is different from HR because it's saying that the work spans across all areas of the hospital, is important around quality care, and it drives strategy. And I also had a dotted line to the CEO. So that responsibility and accountability is there. And then I also present to the board. So I think that's really important that that structure is there, even if this team is small. The other thing is that we reach across different of our partner organizations like the Research Institute, Roger Neilson Children Hospice, University of Ottawa, and the Foundation. And also, we have many advisory committees. So you can't do this work without hearing from families, from patients, from people with lived experience. So you can see in the slide, there's a number of advisory committees that inform our work at CHIO. And finally, the work is very specific. So even though it's connected and interconnected, just like intersectionality, it's hard to put things in silos. But we do have many, like our reach is quite wide from accessibility to French language services. We just launched a Black Health Equity Plan this year, an Indigenous engagement framework, moving to operationalize an Indigenous safe care framework. So we need to do all of that work because it's all part of forwarding that accountability at CHIO. And finally, we need to measure. So I'm just gonna, we have 5 things that CHIO wants to be. We measure it by asking 10 questions in which there's KPIs. We divide up what we're doing at CHIO. So the first branch is all of the work that's happening across CHIO. The second level is all of the actions we're doing. We we collect the numbers so we know what we're doing. Uh, we build awareness. Um, we measure that awareness building. So here's some, shots of like how our education has grown in the last year. And we also take qualitative feedback. So we look at positive feedback, improvement points, or feedback where we need to do better, and then encouragement. What are other ideas we can do? And then we also are tracking the whole journey of the organization. This is a Deloitte IID's maturity model, and we see that we're somewhere between integrated and sustained. We still have more work to do. So that's where I'll leave it. But thank you so much for that.
Sheila, I do want to get to Noel and also Cara, but I just wanted to ask you one other question because you are the inaugural director of this office at CHIO, but you're not new to the EDI space. You've been doing this work for a very long time. There are a lot of organizations that adopt EDI and DEI, but they adopt it to look good. And so I'm wondering what would you say to a person who might challenge you and say CHIO is just performative in its adoption of EDI? Why isn't what CHIO is doing, why is it not performative?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I think it's not performative because we are a service organization that gets feedback, direct feedback all the time. And we can't tell our patients, look at everything we're doing over here if their experience isn't good. And that's not to say that every single person that comes through the doors of CHIO has a good experience, right? We have something called a patient experience office where patients can come in and voice their concerns, and that goes through a process where we talk to the departments where those concerns are situated. Uh, we work to change that. We have that feedback loop. And so I think that being in direct um, service, but also conversations with patients and partners, it keeps us honest. I'm the first person to say we have a lot more to do. We serve people from Nunavut, who are travelers coming down to CHIO. So they're outside of their home in a new culture, in a hospital, which hospitals have not always been good, trusting and safe places for Inuit and other Indigenous peoples. So I think that that truth of that experience and being in contact and working with our partners keeps us honest, but we do have work to do for sure, beyond the performative for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Carla and Nawal, DEI initiatives are facing increased scrutiny, yet somehow your organizations have remained committed. Can you share specific examples of how your inclusion initiatives have positively affected your organization? And Carla, maybe we'll start with you.
Great. Yes. And I do want to just say thank you again for having me speak today. I'm truly honored to be able to speak on behalf of all of the great work Accenture is doing in this space. And a lot of, again, Sheila, some of the things that you've mentioned, some of the things that Dr. Sukir have mentioned really resonate with what we're all seeing on the ground in terms of some of that rising political rhetoric, and again that scrutiny that I feel like we're all facing, especially if we think about Accenture and the type of business we perform. We operate globally, so we do have a heavy presence in the United States. So certainly we have felt some of that come down on us, and so what we've had to do is just be a lot more intentional around how we're connecting inclusion to measurable outcomes, right? So I think that is going to be the most critical key to success in this current environment. And so some of those measurable outcomes come in the form as talent attraction, skills availability, in particular, the right skills. We are competing in a highly competitive marketplace right now for the types of skills that we would be looking to hire for at Accenture. And so being able to tap into some of these untapped talent pools is really critical, as well as some of those comments around employee retention and community impact. So just as an example, Accenture has a very long-standing partnership with the World Skills Employment Center in Ottawa. And as part of that partnership, so we've been partnering for 9 years now. Mark Carmesino and his team has led out a very robust mentorship program. And through that, we've been able to support over 500 new Canadians with mentorship opportunities to help equip them with skills, guidance, building confidence, and more importantly, to be able to secure meaningful employment. So, in fact, we've been able to help at least 190 individuals secure meaningful employment just 30 days following the completion of that mentorship program. So those numbers, I think, speak in itself. Just our past cohort, we had 50 Accenture mentors participating in this. So that's been fantastic. So, needless to say, it's not just feel good opportunity for us. It's something that's actually strengthening our talent ecosystem by being able to connect us with skilled professionals that might have been otherwise overlooked or missed. Again, if there's individuals out there that just don't know how to get into the Canadian marketplace, the mentorship program has been able to build those connections. So for Accenture to connect with those individuals, but for those individuals to connect with organizations outside of Accenture as well.
Cara, I do want to get to Noel, but I found it interesting that you acknowledged that Accenture has sometimes felt the pressure that has come from the coarsening of the discourse. And one could say the backlash against DEI. And I'm curious as to how that pressure has manifested itself within your organization and how you responded to it. What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think for many of us, it was a big shock. Just a couple of years ago, I had played a dual role of being our overall Canada technology recruitment lead for Accenture Canada, but I was also our inclusion and diversity recruitment lead as some of these changes came down. Again, I think our organization overall had to pivot. We do operate and conduct a lot of business in the United States, and the government being a major client of Accenture. And so we did have to look at ways that we would reframe these types of activities.
I'm sorry,
And
and you
so,
felt and you felt you had to reframe it because you were afraid of the consequences of not reframing it.
correct. Yes. Yeah. And so we pivoted. And a lot of that was, again, pivoting to what's in the best interest of our business leaders, right? How are these types of activities, these types of programs going to tangibly create positive results for them? And so again, when we talk about skills, again, it's a highly competitive market that we are recruiting and hiring within. A lot of organizations out there looking for the same types of skills. So being able to build up these robust pipelines that we may not have had access to before has really shown some incredible results for us.
Noel, I wanted to turn to you and just ask that same question that I posed both to Sheila and Cara. Can you share some specific examples of how your inclusion initiatives have affected in a positive way your organization?
Sure, Adrian. I want to answer with specifics, but first, I want to just ask a question because it will help understand our results better. And my question is, when you picture a skilled immigrant coming to Canada, what do you assume they need? Well, I'm not expecting an answer, but most people said like job stability, a foot in the door, like the basics. So many skilled immigrants didn't leave poverty. They leave careers. So in our opinion and in our experience at Fast Forward French, this assumption is incomplete because they arrive like our immigrants at least arrived at level 4 or level 5 of Maslow pyramid. So they're seeking belonging, recognition, contribution, purpose, not survival significance. So when we understood this at Fast Forward French, everything shifted, and this reality helped us to get like some amazing results. And let me share some of it. So for example, retention went to 96%. Tenure increased it sixfold. In our case, people stay not because they have to, but because they want to. Second, performance. We hire intentionally. We know many of our French teachers had backgrounds in IT, engineering, project management. So we know they had a full story behind. So we just simply asked them one simple question. Even if you were hired as a French teacher, can you do else something more? What do you do more? What can you do else? And by asking this question, we had a lot of reactions. And today, our CRM, our HRIS, our automated scheduled system, they're all built in-house, maintained in-house by our own team. We didn't buy external systems. We didn't hire outside vendors. Our people built it and they owned it. For us, the most concrete business outcome for hiring people intentionally and fully was this shift. So third, we innovate. We didn't set out as a tech-enabled organization, but in our case, when we created conditions where people can contribute fully, they showed what they can do. And in our experience, when people felt safe, they contribute more. When they felt they belong, they brought new ideas. And that's exactly what happened in our case. They felt recognized, so they committed fully and they started innovating, and we took it. So basically, that's how it works at Fast Forward French. We innovate because we finally saw these immigrants. So when people ask us whether inclusion has made a difference, we don't reach for obstacle arguments. I point out our systems, our numbers, our team. It's our experience. It's our answer.
You know, Noelle, I'm thinking I need to bring you into my class at Carleton, at the School of Journalism, because we're often telling students it's very important to ask the right question, right? The right question makes all the difference. You say that you asked that question about what do our employees need. And I'm wondering, like, what are some specific things then that you changed as a result of asking that question? Can you give us some concrete examples of changes to your policies or just your general comportment behavior within the workplace that changed?
Absolutely. So we do a lot of check-ins, for example, and we know that at the beginning, when in the journey of a newcomer, we acknowledge the fact that these people came leaving a story behind, and they're looking for belonging. So we created this belonging, and we want them to feel that they belong to this new family, and they start making roots here. And we help them to feel that way. We help them to really feel that they're home again and they find back themselves again. So by doing this with a lot of check-ins, real questions: how are you feeling? How are you handling your housing problem? How are you? And keeping these stories in mind. We don't just do check-ins just to check boxes and say goodbye. I did my job to show it to my boss. No, we check in because we want to really make sure that our employees are safe, are good, are feeling happy, and they're really making like their lives better by doing this decision of changing everything around their stories and their lives. So we do real check-ins. Our policy, for example, regarding vacation changed because we acknowledge that these newcomers need to go back home at a certain point. So we use it to have a policy of maximum 2 weeks, but it doesn't really belong or answer their real needs, because at a certain point they're not going to do that every single year, but from time to time they need longer vacation. So we just changes this like maximum 2 weeks. Like, it doesn't make sense in their situation, so let's make it longer and let you reconnect, go to your home country, enjoy, and then go back with a lot of ideas, happily and willing to do more. So we really understood what they need. We also do a lot of surveys to check and keep asking ourselves the right questions. Are we answering the right questions right now? Do we need to shift? Are we still aligned with our employees' needs, or we should to adjust and to change? So that's basically it.
And if I can ask, like when you are that's the question. You talked about checking in, and I'm
Yes.
just curious as to how that works. So does the check-in happen on a kind of a one-to-one basis with managers, or is this a check-in that includes the community, that in which people are, I don't know, sitting around a circle and talking and telling their stories, sharing their stories with the group? How does that how does that manifest itself?
Thank you for the question, because it happens in both ways. So we have smaller groups where our captain, we call captain, but these are our team leaders. And by the way, they're present here. So thank you for doing the great job. So they're doing the check-ins in a smaller groups, but we, as HR, do the check-in on one-on-one. We do the mid-probation, the end of probation, stay interviews multiple times. And when we know that some specific employees needs more check-in than others, we're going to go and just ask if they do have some updates regarding this situation, or are they now feeling better, or do they need more support or more time off, or whatever. It depends on each situation is different, but we do both. We do the groups check-ins and individual check-ins depending on the situation in general.
Okay. Cara, I'm curious as to how, like, some concrete steps that Accenture has taken to try to attract a broader talent pool when it comes to recruitment. How have you how have you gone about doing that?
Yeah, so largely I think that again goes back to a lot of the flagship partnerships that we've established within Canada. So a great example I've already referenced would be World Skills, but there's a number of different organizations that we've been working with for many, many years that attract newcomer talent, immigrants, and really of all kinds of individuals who come from underserved backgrounds. And then in those partnerships, a lot of that's going to be a mutual co-design, if you will, of various programs. So, for example, making sure that sort of both people have a seat at the table to understand how we're going to be designing that programming, how that then works for Accenture's end, but then also works for the individuals that we would be serving through those programs. And that does extend, beyond, I would say, the mentorship programs. That extends to things like boot camp training and things along those lines. So, for example, we work very closely with an organization called Empower Canada, and I sit on the Empower Canada Industry Council. So I sit on the board. And we meet on a, let's say, quarterly basis with several different industry leaders in various capacities. And we actually weigh in on the types of programs that they're building out for their participants and their members to take that's going to help equip them with the skills that we are seeing on the market. And again, especially in a space like technology, where you're seeing technology evolve at such a rapid pace, having organizations like Accenture sit in and have our industry experts weigh in on that programming is just going to help everyone that we're working with propel themselves for success in the future.
Sheila, a hospital is a place with a lot of experts.
Hmm.
It's a place with people who have very, very specialized skills, a lot of highly trained. But how do you ensure an inclusive recruitment process, particularly for immigrant employees in a context like a hospital, like in a place like CHIO?
Yeah. Um, Well, recruitment is like in a hospital, there's so many different kinds of skills, right? There's your medical staff who are basically consultants, and then you have unionized nurses and so on. So I think one of the things that I'll just start with is CHIO was the host to a really important program called the National Newcomers Navigation Network. It was called N4, and it grew out of the Syrian refugees coming and the Afghan refugees coming in. It was a way to create welcoming packages for all the immigrants and refugees coming in through our doors. And that program was cut by our IRCC last year with some of the policy changes. So, CHIO's in this interesting position of being both serving newcomers, but also employing newcomers. So the recruitment is that, of course, we are trying to measure our workplace. We're trying to create inclusive hiring practices. A lot of the licensure for internationally trained healthcare professionals are different from each province, so that doesn't make it easy. But we are trying to open our doors so that even if a doctor, say, trained abroad, cannot practice medicine here, they often get other jobs, like in policy. So I will meet any day at CHIO a medical practitioner from somewhere else who is not working as a doctor, though there are many, many newcomers working as doctors here at CHIO, but they might be working as a program manager or as a geneticist or something else. And so it's like really the recruitment is about looking at the skills, like I think, looking at the skills, looking at transferable skills as well, but also that asset that if you represent somebody from the community who's coming for care, you are likely to create that more inclusive environment
But,
throughout,
but
right?
I'm wondering,
Like reflecting.
I'm wondering, are there transitional programs within CHIO that would enable that highly trained person? So let's say this person is a geneticist, and has come to Canada wanting to work in genetics and ends up at CHIO working maybe in a more administrative role, right? But really, the person wants to be in genetics. How do you go about helping that person to achieve that goal? Like, is there a way within the CHIO workplace that they can perhaps start here but end up over here?
Yeah, there are PEEPS programs, so something like a mentorship program or a peer support program that we have at CHIO. Some of those standards are created by like the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons. So that's sort of beyond our scope. But there are mentorship programs, there's PEEPS programs, again, peer programs. We have affinity groups as well, which was just launched, and that's where like you know, staff, medical staff, residents at CHIO can create a network of like-minded people. So it could be around being Black, it could be around being an immigrant, it could be about being a healthcare professional who's not working in your profession, and work with each other, connect, help build careers, and so on. So that's a kind of a concrete way of doing that.
Cara, you wanted to weigh in.
Yes, I was going to say we have an example of this almost, I would say, in the reverse. And so, in a lot of ways, of course, we're getting involved in health and public sector. So, Accenture, we operate in over 40 different industries, and then, of course, we're working with clients on technology implementations, consulting, strategy, et cetera. And one example that I could flag like that would be, for example, Epic, right? So EPIC is a certification within the healthcare environment. And so we do look at individuals who are looking to pivot into technology. They are experienced individuals. They've been working in the healthcare practice for a long time. They could be a nurse or any other type of occupation. And then what we do is we leverage our reinvention engines or our advanced technology centers within Accenture to bring those individuals on who have that background and have those certifications, and then actually get them upskilled into the technology side of that, which has been really successful for us. And that's, again, one of those things where this is sort of our it's baked into the type of work that we do. So it's not necessarily, DEI driven, so to speak, but it is a really great opportunity for us to be able to find really great skilled professionals and people who are looking to make that career pivot and get that opportunity.
Noel, earlier you talked about ways in which, Fast Forward French is working to keep really your employees happy, like to keep
Mhm.
people and to ensure that your employees feel seen, that they feel recognized, that they feel a sense of belonging. When it comes to recruitment, what are some other things that you are doing to bring a wide array of people into the organization?
Thank you for the question. And well, it's each business is different, but in our experience, we don't really have a pipeline problem, but we have mostly like the visibility problem because the talent is already there. But our hiring system was, as many other organizations, designed to see familiarities and what we already know. So the difference wasn't seen, maybe. So now, like the shift is when we asked ourselves again, like asking the right questions, what would it look like to design a process that actually find the best person, regardless where they're coming from? And there, the changes came. And the first concrete change happened when we go where the talent is. So we partner with WordSkills, with their different programs, with other for like communities for newcomers, like the YMCA, SEO, La Cité Collégiale. We attend many community job fairs, and we rely on the references from our team members too, because when people are happy and they love where they work, they tell others and they create their hiring by themselves to people who wants to join the same organization. For instance, in our last opening position in December, we had 353 applications for one single position, just by the same combination of these pipelines. So Actually, we don't really have a pipeline problem, but the problem was in the process to see the skills and what they're capable of. So we looked at every step of our process and asked ourselves if each barrier is necessary. First, we removed the Canadian experience. Okay, so no Canadian experience requirement because each experience is valued and is seen. We simplified the application, and then we do for sure do a technical assessment, but it's mostly to understand and not to screen people out. And we shifted the traditional interview by real simulations. And when we have an opening, we put people who are doing the job doing real simulation to the candidates. For example, if it's a hiring for a French teacher position, we just bring French teacher positions to the interview, do the simulation, playing the role of a very beginner learner, for example, and then making the candidate like acting and responding naturally to see the human being behind. So here, we're not screening really the skills, but we see their patience, their empathy, their real-time capability of adjusting, their humility, and these abilities to stay concentrated under pressures. These are the actual predictors for success for these people in the required job, for example. And then once this was done, we saw like really good fit to the positions and longer retention because we're screening what the job needs by these real simulations. And the simulation depends on the position.
I'm an old man. I've reached that stage. I'm middle age right now. I can't believe I'm 55 right now. I've become an old.
That's not old.
Yeah. I become an old man. But sometimes becoming middle age, you can become comfortable with where you are, right? And that's what, like, human beings, we like staying in our comfort zones sometimes. And embracing discomfort can be very, very scary. And it can be difficult. You said something there that I found really interesting, Noel. You were saying that you're trying to see things that you don't know, right? And that's a hard thing for human beings to do. Like, how do you see something that you don't know? Well, maybe we call that imagination, right? Like, it sounds as if, in a way, your organization is embracing imagination and trying to use imagination and applying it to the workings of the everyday, in the workplace. So I'm curious, like, is that something that can be replicated within other organizations, outside of Fast Forward French? Like, how do we go about seeing what we don't know, as you put it? Any suggestions as to how we do that?
I think the simulation is a powerful tool and the simulation to technical simulation and human being simulation. So pushing a little bit the candidate during the simulation will show what we can't really fake. And it will really show us the real human behind. And that right attitude is what we're seeking. So I think that every organization should know what they're looking for and what type of attitude would match with their culture, with their environment. And they start just to design. So the job is to design the right simulation for the industry or the job that they're looking for and make the people doing the job do the interview and the simulation. Plus, obviously, an HR person, like not only that one, but this part is very important to see if the person doing today the job would be able to see what the other person, what the candidate would be able to do.
Kara, you were nodding your head as Nawal is speaking, and I'm wondering, like, when you think about imagination and applying it to better integrating immigrants into your organization or into our organizations, like, what are some ways in which we can be using imagination to ensure that immigrants have a better experience and are able
Yeah.
to enter these spaces in a way
Yeah.
that recognizes their full humanity?
It's really interesting. So, in transparency, Nowell and I connected before today. So her and I got to sit down and have an open dialogue with each other on just some of the things that we were thinking about around these questions that were asked of us. And her and I talked about the fact that, the organizations that we work for have very different business models, right? And so I think in some ways, not everything is one size fits all. For example, obviously, as a global management technology consulting firm, a lot of the work that we do is going to be performed for very specific projects and accounts for very specific needs, right? And sometimes that can be challenging, right? Again, when we're held to some of our requirements that our clients are telling us that they absolutely need. Of course, we always want to work with some leeway on, what are the absolute requirements for this role, and then where could we possibly look at potential or transferable skills or things along those lines. So I think always continuing to sort of push on that to truly understand what is that minimum requirement. And then for us, again, it goes back to these partnerships that we have, the mentorship programs, and our ability to influence things where people can go through skills upskilling and get educated in a particular area so that it helps close the gaps of what employers like Accenture would be looking for in terms of their talent. And then again, just through different models that organizations may have. So I've explained to you, our advanced technology centers. So those are really focused around scalable solutions where we are investing quite a lot into learning and development and being able to build that capability. So a lot of times that's going to be bringing people in at, let's say, maybe a senior analyst or a consultant or a specialist, and being able to actually have them grow from within the organization. But again, it just depends on the different opportunities that you might have to leverage.
Yeah.
Sheila, oh, sorry, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was going to say, yes, there's very similar things, right, at CHIO in terms of, organizational development and training. There's a lot of opportunities to expand for people who are newcomers,
Yeah.
immigrants who are onboarding. People often take their yellow belt training for more of that project management or policy work. We also have trainings that allow you to do uh, healthcare administration, right? Health administration courses. But I was also going to say, about the assets added. Like there is the qualifications for a job, and that's what you're looking for. But when you have an immigrant experience or a newcomer experience or a racialized experience or a religious minority experience, that is actually an asset added, especially when you are serving these communities. And I'll give you an example. For instance, some Muslim women who are coming to CHIO may find those gowns that we give them not very conducive. And so the idea, to be able to say, well, what do we need to adapt in our environment to make people feel safe? So is it longer gowns, right? Is it, being able to show that we can, religious diversity is acceptable, it's encouraged at CHIO, not only wearing religious symbols, but also being able to express, right? Like having a prayer room or a reflection room,
Mhm.
right? So things like that will help to retain. Recently, we acknowledged Hanukkah, right? With bringing a rabbi in. We also had Muslim residents, organize an iftar at CHIO. So it's also making the environment conducive to say that, you can have your culture and be valued for it when you come to work.
There's a
Yeah.
question. There's a question now from our audience, and I think it's appropriate to pose it now. I had my own questions, but this question's better than my question. And the question is, in changing a policy for a particular group, how do you ensure or maintain internal equity with other employee groups? And Sheila, maybe I can ask you to kind of address that question.
I don't know if we change a policy for a particular group, but there's definitely um, our policies are also supported by legislation, right? So we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we have the Ontario Human Rights Code, right? We have those kind of guidelines that will affect, for instance, accommodations or adaptations, whether it's accommodations for persons with disabilities or accommodations for religious minorities, right? So it's not that it's for a particular group, but it's more of a guideline that is grounded in our freedoms and legislation. And then it can be applied to different groups. We have that. But then we also have, of course, that has to be in alignment with our own internal policies around professionalism or standards
Mhm.
that are set out by the colleges and the you know, for, that govern nurses, for instance, or doctors, right? So always a balancing act, but we like to think of it as, these are grounded in legislation, grounded in rights-based guidelines, but also must align with your professional duties. So every freedom has its restriction when you are a professional and coming to work and you have a job to serve, right? I don't know if that answered your
Yeah.
question, but
Well,
yeah.
Noel, I was wondering if you could maybe address that question because earlier you were talking about the fact that your organization, in some ways, has adapted to meet the needs of its employees, right?
Mhm.
You've actually changed the organization to ensure that people feel that they can bring their whole selves and they can kind of fully express themselves within the organization. But that can sometimes pose a challenge, can it not? And can you do too much to be serving the needs of a particular group or particular individual within your organization?
Yeah, that's true. So it's really about balance. And basically, we try to serve our operations, but at the same time, try to accommodate every employee's needs and dependamment of their like background or whatever. So we do have a policy to recognize any religious or cultural events or so that each person can use when they need if they have to attend or be absent for these reasons, and that it applies to everyone. And it's not to a specific group of people. So anyone with like a special celebration, they need just to tell us that, okay, I'm using my right in this one. So, and we're agreement, and they can just take the day off to celebrate their personal or religious or cultural celebration. We send messages to every groups to celebrate like different celebrations, and we ask people if we're missing one, please let us know. Please express yourself and let us know if there's a celebration that you're doing and we're not recognizing, so that people can feel again the belonging and they're respected. And if we give to each person, we respect the different celebrations or religious traditions coming from here and there. We're not accommodating one special group, we're accommodating everyone, but each one has different needs, and we're trying to answer and accommodate all these needs under the umbrella of this policy, for example.
Cara, Noel and Sheila, in some ways, have an advantage over you. Their organizations have an advantage. And the advantage is that they are rooted in particular communities, right? They're rooted in Ottawa. They're rooted in Canada. You face a different kind of challenge. You're a transnational organization, right? And you're dealing with different kinds of cultural pressures, I would imagine.
Mhm.
So how do you go about achieving that quote unquote balance, meeting the needs, accommodating the needs of some of the individuals, some of the individual immigrants, for example, within your organization, while also recognizing the need to establish maybe certain standards for the organization?
So I think what's great is that we do have um, invaluable leadership that understand and recognize the nuances in Canada. So that's something that I think is important to call out right away on that question is making sure that we have Canadian leaders that have a seat at these tables to address when, again, that sort of one size does not fit all. A good example I could give you it would be on the topic of Indigenous talent, right? Or Indigenous employees, right? And understanding some of the barriers that they may face, and recognizing that some of the global policies that we may have would not be conducive to them, either as employees or potential talent for organization, and being able to take a look and really look at it from that lens to be able to influence, as it was pointed out, accommodations to that process or things along those lines. And that would similarly apply to any of the underserved groups that we would be supporting, understanding when those no nuances exist, and then just being strong enough, courageous enough to be able to voice those concerns and ensure that those are heard by, our senior levels of leadership in our HR departments in Canada.
Kara, based on your experience, what advice would you offer organizations looking to strengthen their DEI or EDI efforts, particularly in hiring and integrating immigrant talent?
Yeah, so I mean, I think again, um, just making sure that it all boils down to measurable outcomes and impact, right? I mean, again, we are working in an environment where, and I hate to say it this way, but the bottom line is always going to be the most critical priority.
So
So how,
profit.
correct, that's right? Ensuring that our business is successful. So I think it's important to be able to call out and address how these mentorship programs or how these key relationships and partnerships that we have with organizations for Accenture, and in our world, that would be being able to, not only upskill, mentor, train talent, but also bringing in talent that is critical for our business's success, who will then be able to translate their work into revenue and profit for our organization. And then that really is the truth of it. So when we think about programs that we want to run, things along those lines. We need leadership support as well. We need that buy-in. Programs are not going to be successful if it's just one or two people who are very passionate about a topic and are looking to deliver this big outcome. It just does not work. We truly do need to have a leadership advocate who is going to be the backbone behind some of that. And then again, it goes back to that sort of co-design model, making sure that it's not just Accenture who's deciding what does this program look like? How is this going to work? How are we going to attract people to be interested in this program? We do need to make sure that we're sitting down with our partners and understanding the needs from both sides so that we can have the ultimate success in the end of that. And then being able to then vocalize those successes as well, because I find a lot of times we do a lot of great work in this type of space. Maybe your close team may know about all of the great things that you've done, but you have not then translated that to measurable outcomes that can then get you the buy-in to be able to run that program again next year and the year after that, or build that program to be more in depth, right? So I would say that that's probably most important. And then in terms of retention, onboarding, and things along those lines. Now, well, I know we had, quite a lot of conversation on this topic, but um, one thing that I find is really amazing about newcomers or immigrant talent, they come to the table with a lot of resilience. It's just part of that DNA, and I find that organizations like the one that I work for, we are constantly changing. I mean, we probably go through a reorganization, a reinvention, if you will, probably every 3 years or so. And I'm just, again, being transparent. So that resiliency is amazing. But when we do get this talent coming in at Accenture, we also want to make sure that there is that sense of community and belonging. Right. So some of the ways that we would do that would be through things like our employee resource groups, right? So we do have a cross-cultural employee resource group at Accenture, which a lot of newcomers or immigrants tend to lean towards is a great form of community within the organization, like-minded individuals who have similar values, but then also making sure that they're set up with a mentor, making sure that they understand how they can grow and who they need to connect with, and just being able to give that support. So, you move from your sort of day one to your 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and giving them that vision to stay with the company long term.
Sheila, there's some people who, in listening to our conversation over the last hour, are going to scoff at what's been said, right? They're going to say EDI and DEI is so last decade. It's so like it's the 2010s. We're in 2026 right now. Why do we need DEI and EDI for organizations? Why do we need DEI to help us hire and integrate immigrant talent? We're beyond that. We're post DEI. What would be your response to that?
That's a good question. Well, I think the response is in the science. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I work at a scientific organization, and the evidence that we need, ideas, is in the data. So we're we're living in a country where you're talking about outcomes. Well, we look at health outcomes. The lowest or the poorest health outcomes are experienced by the most disadvantaged people. So healthcare disparities are experienced by people from socio-disadvantaged backgrounds, Black and racialized, Indigenous people, persons with disabilities. We're so fortunate that our CEO is Dr. Vera Etches, who, of course, led our COVID response. And during that period of time, we were able to collect the data around different demographic groups and their experience of COVID. And so when we're looking at health equity data, um, you can't deny it. Like that is the evidence that EDI is important. And it's not just important in terms of correcting or trying to shape the health outcomes by creating pathways of care or by creating, and this is, I think, really important. While immigrants might be resilient, many immigrants and newcomers come from war-torn countries. So part of our response around health inequities is adopting a trauma-informed care approach. And that trauma-informed care approach means that people are trained to understand their own traumas. They're trained to understand their own biases. They're trained to be able to also have a universal approach that people will come in the door with many different traumas that may not be apparent, right? So it's both for caregiving, but it's also about collegial relationships. It's both an HR function, that trauma-informed care approach. So we know that having that approach, evidence shows that having a trauma-informed care approach helps with retention. It
Mhm.
helps with a morale, like coming to work and feeling included. It helps with better patient outcomes. So, you know, we're not beyond it. We're not beyond EDI because everything in our society, the growing divide between rich and poor, lots of data to show that, health inequities, unemployment, who is sort of, again, still at the bottom of the barrel. All of that evidence shows that we have much farther to go. And I just want to say that, both the quantitative data, but the qualitative data is important. How are people experiencing their workforce? How are people experiencing care? And hearing from them is important. Just say one more thing that has to do with structure and accountability. Um, it's really important for people who are making the decisions, who are making, who are accountable for our organizations to hear directly from immigrants. And as an example, in January of this year, we brought in a number of community organizations like the Somerset West Community Health Center and others that came and spoke directly to our board. They express the voices of newcomers, some of the barriers, some of how, their suggestions around how to make healthcare more accessible. We speak with our partners. There's lots of different organizations, both hiring immigrants, but also serving immigrants. And so that kind of network of collaboration is really important.
What difference does that make in concrete terms? Why does that matter?
It makes a difference in access. So, for instance, I'll just, say that in our emergency wait times have dropped a lot because we made a particular strategy to do that. We know a lot of people come into the emergency department, and a lot of them are newcomers because they don't know that there's a healthcare center in their neighborhood, or they don't know that they can pick up the phone and get virtual healthcare, right? So, you know that those connections and that information sharing is really important, right? Like we might not be able to reach all of the communities that need to know things, but we know partners, healthcare partners or community partners that are the front line that can talk to people. So it does make a difference because that's a very concrete example that our emergency wait times our wait times in our emergency department have dropped a lot. So that means people, they're getting more timely care. We're talking to them. We have surveys that go out to patients, and they're divided according to demographic groups, so we can see the experience of Indigenous people, of racialized people, of persons with disabilities, of persons who are francophones. We can see what their experience have been, and those are changing. And
Mhm.
so I think it's working together is always so important. Sharing strategies are important.
Just before I go to Noel, I did want to encourage people, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make, we'd like to encourage you to send them to the Q&A sign. So please do enter those questions so that I can pose them to our panelists. Um, Noel, you talked about your own story, your own journey to Canada as a newcomer, someone who has advanced into executive leadership. What's one concrete action that you would challenge leaders at this summit to take, let's say, within the next 12 months?
Thank you, Adrian, for the question. But first, I want to just react regarding your previous question regarding the like
DEI.
2026 and the EI now. So honestly, in my opinion, in 2026, the capability every organization needs today is resilience and adaptability. AI is reshaping industries in months. Long-term planning feels almost obsolete today. So the organization winning today are those who can change, sniff the change, and adapt and move quickly. So now let's ask ourselves another question, like the third today. Who has already demonstrated that ability, this resilience, not in a simulation, but in real life? That's our immigrants. They have already done the hardest transformation there. They didn't just switch industries or countries. They rebuilt their entire lives in a new country, new culture. They are building themselves from scratch. It's not a soft skill. That's a very powerful professional capability that every industry needs now. So therefore, it's still important today, and we need these immigrants in our businesses today. So to go, yeah.
No, carry on. Continue. Yeah.
And to go back to your question, let me start with something that I deeply believe, that Canada has no shortage of talents. What we sometimes lack is the confidence to fully embrace these talents. And it's linked to my previous comment. We talk about skills gap, labor market challenges, recruitment difficulties, and yet every day, highly skilled immigrants are passed over because their profile looks different from what we expected. Not because they aren't qualified, but because we haven't always built our system to recognize these differences. So, and I say we because at FFF, we were there too, and we had to learn this ourselves. So when employers hesitate in front of a profile that seems too strong, too much, overqualified for a role, I don't think it's a lack of growth, goodwill. I think it's a genuine question. Will this person be fulfilled here? Will we be able to give them a chance so that they can thrive? It's actually a thoughtful question, and at FFF, we decided to answer it instead of avoiding it. We stopped asking, is the person too much for this role? And started asking, what kind of environment would allow this person to reach their full potential? That simple shift in mindset changed everything. People who joined us as French teacher ended up building our entire tech and structure, the CRM, the HRIS, the scheduling system, not because we planned it, because we created the condition for that. So if my challenge would be in the next 2 months, consider one immigrant candidate whose profile surprises you a little and give them a chance. Even if they look overqualified, maybe you will be able to retain this potential.
Mhm. Noelle, I know that you have a day job, but I was thinking that maybe you need a new one. You should trademark that slogan, "Sniff the change."
Sniff the
I was thinking
change.
a savvy marketer would take that slogan and run with it. What I like that. Sniff the change. Um, well, this is for Sheila and Cara. And Cara, maybe I'll start with you. If there's one mindset shift that leaders must adopt in this evolving DEI landscape, what would you encourage them to embrace?
I think what I would encourage them to embrace is treating DEI like a business capability instead of a campaign. And because I feel like, you know, over the many years, I feel like a lot of people are viewing it that way as a campaign and not something that can help create success for our
So a
businesses.
campaign then is the idea of it's temporary. It's not
Mhm.
it's okay. It's provisional somehow.
It's not a flavor of the week. Think of this as a business capability.
Sheila?
Um, I think I would encourage leaders to take a nuanced and agile approach. The ability, like, I think that what Canada has gone through is moving from, full speed ahead to EDI to, oh, you know, we need to be conservative. We need to protect ourselves. And I think that what destroys us is polarization.
Hmm.
And so adopting a nuanced, curious approach to be open to thinking differently, to being uncomfortable, um, to having those conversations, really hearing, listening, and shifting out of those certainty positions are going to help us make the change because we are living in a volatile world. We are living in an unpredictable world. And we have businesses to run, but more than that, we have ethical questions that we need to answer and respond to every day. So take some humility, take a step back and listen, and really recognize the disparities that are facing people today and embrace. I know this is going to sound flaky, but embrace love and meaningful change to make full participation for everybody, especially those who don't have it in our society.
If I were a truly competent journalist, I would end things now because that's the perfect way to end. However, I'm not a competent journalist. And I would be remiss if I would be remiss if I didn't mention a question that one of our audience members just posed that I think that they want answered. So I'm just going to ask Noelle to address this question. And the question was in connection to the vacation policy that you amended to accommodate longer vacation periods for those traveling to go home. How was this policy change communicated, and what was the impact? Was it applied consistently to all employee groups?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. And yes, well, maybe because each business is different, we have the opportunity to have like some little gaps in our business. So we encourage these people to take advantage of the little like slowdown of the activity if they know that they need to travel, so they can take advantage of a specific period of the year so they can plan in advance and they can just ask for vacation and go as long as they want, and it might go up to 2 months. And we can allow this because our operations allow it. So it's not just to allow people to go outside and then we stay without work at all. So it's not that extreme, but at the same time, we're trying to accommodate everyone who needs to do that in a specific period of the year. So we're matching our operational needs with the needs of our employees, and we have heard them, and it was mentioned in one of our surveys. And even the surveys are usually just run surveys and then get some numbers and we're done. No, so we don't do that. At Fast Forward French, we really go deeply to every single question and see what can we do. What is there something that we can really learn from this survey so that we can make our environment better and make people feel better so that they can give more to the company. And that's exactly what happened just by doing this little shift in our vacation policy, because it matches with our operational needs. So it's not causing any problem, and anyone asking for that can get it if they just apply the policy.
Well, maybe I'm not such an incompetent journalist because as I look out the window, there's snow here in Ottawa. It's still winter. So vacation is hopeful. Vacation gives us something to kind of dream of. So maybe that's the good way to end this wonderful conversation. So thank you so much to Noelle. Thank you so much to Cara and Sheila for your insight and for your willingness to share over this last hour and a bit. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.